Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. The moment Lena's lips touched my husband's mouth across the anniversary dinner table, I knew my old life was over. No one expected what came next, least of all them. While everyone in the restaurant gasped and my mother-in-law dropped her wine glass, shattering it across the marble floor, I simply placed my hand on my 8-month pregnant belly and smiled. The twins kicked, as if they understood their mother was about to change everything. My name is Alexis King, and 6 hours earlier I believed I was celebrating 5 years of marriage to Brandon King at the finest restaurant in downtown Atlanta. I wore a royal blue maternity dress that complemented my brown skin, and I had spent 2 hours getting my curls perfect. The private dining room was filled with roses. Candlelight flickered across glass and silver, and 30 of our closest family members and friends surrounded us. Brandon's parents sat on my left, beaming with pride. My best friend, Tanisha Holloway, sat across from me in a sharp red pantsuit, raising her glass for a toast. "To Alexis and Brandon," Tanisha said, her voice warm and steady. 5 years of marriage and 2 beautiful babies on the way. You two are proof that love and partnership can build empires. The applause that followed was loud and sincere. Brandon squeezed my hand and kissed my cheek. If anyone in that room had been asked to describe us, they would have said we were the perfect couple. He was the charming real estate developer with the $1 million smile. I was the financial architect behind Sterling Heights Real Estate, the company we had built from nothing. Together, we were Atlanta's power couple, featured in magazines and blogs, interviewed about our so-called fairy tale success. Then Lena walked in. She was not invited. She was not supposed to know the address of our private room, yet she strode through the doorway in a tight emerald dress that left little to the imagination, her heels clicking against the floor like a countdown to disaster. She did not look at anyone but Brandon. Her gaze locked onto him with a familiarity that made my stomach drop. "Sorry I am late," Lena said, unapologetic. Traffic was terrible. Conversations died mid-sentence. The room shifted around her presence. Brandon's hand slipped from mine and dropped to his lap. The color drained from his face. That was my first public confirmation, though I had known the truth for months. "Lena, what are you doing here?" Brandon stammered. "What do you mean?" She laughed lightly, tossing her hair. "You invited me, remember? You said this was a celebration for the whole Sterling Heights family." My spine went cold. I had made the guest list. Brandon had approved it. Lena's name had not been there. What happened next went beyond anything I had imagined, even in my worst late-night scenarios. Lena walked right up to my husband, placed her hands on his face, and kissed him. It was not a friendly peck, not an awkward mistake. It was a full, deliberate, passionate kiss that lasted long enough for every person in the room to understand exactly what it meant. 5 long, humiliating seconds. When she finally pulled away, she turned to me. Her eyes were triumphant and cruel, full of challenge. She wanted me to break. She wanted me to scream, cry, throw a glass, flip the table, anything that would turn me into the hysterical pregnant wife while she played the victim. She wanted to prove she could take my husband in front of me, and there was nothing I could do about it. Instead, I took a slow sip of water. I placed the glass down carefully. I stood, smoothing my blue dress over my belly, and said in a clear, calm voice, "Excuse me for a moment. I need to use the restroom." Tanisha pushed back her chair. "I will come with you." "No," I said gently, resting my hand on her shoulder. "I am fine. I just need a minute." The walk to the bathroom felt like a mile. Behind me, the room exploded. Brandon's mother shrieked at Lena. His father demanded explanations. Tanisha's voice cut through the chaos, trying to get people to calm down. Brandon stammered, searching for words that did not exist. I locked myself in the largest bathroom stall and pulled out my phone. My hands were steady. My breathing was controlled. I had rehearsed this moment in my head for 3 straight months. First call. "Mr. Patterson, this is Alexis King. Yes, I know it is late. I am ready to proceed with everything we discussed. File the divorce papers tomorrow morning. And yes, send the evidence to the Internal Revenue Service immediately." Second call. "Jerome, it is time. The investment meeting scheduled for tomorrow. I need you to pull out." "Yes, the entire 50 million. Contact the other investors tonight. Tell them what I told you about the audit and the federal investigation that is coming." Third call. "This is Alexis King calling the fraud hotline at First National Bank. I need to report suspicious activity on business account number. I recited the numbers from memory. Yes, I have documentation. I am the co-owner of the account. I am reporting my business partner and husband for embezzlement and financial fraud. Each call took less than 3 minutes. By the time I hung up, my revenge was fully in motion. 3 months of planning, 3 months of gathering evidence, 3 months of becoming someone Brandon never imagined I could be, and now the first domino had fallen, with one messy public kiss. I washed my hands slowly, reapplied my lipstick, and studied my reflection. The woman staring back at me was not broken. She was sharpened. When I returned to the dining room, the scene had descended into chaos. Lena was crying now, mascara streaking down her face. Brandon stood in the corner, his head in his hands. His mother was still yelling. His father looked like he might collapse. My mother-in-law turned toward me as if I were the one who needed to explain anything. I walked past them all, picked up my purse, and turned to Tanisha. "Can you drive me home?" "Of course," Tanisha said instantly, grabbing her bag. Brandon finally looked up. "Alexis, please let me explain." I held his gaze for a long, measured second. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of business, 5 years of faith, gone in the time it takes to blink. "There is nothing to explain," I said quietly. "I saw everything I needed to see." "Please," he begged, taking a step toward me. "Do not leave like this. Watch me." Tanisha slid her arm through mine, and we walked out together. Behind us, Lena's shrill voice carried across the room. "Brandon, what is she going to do? Why is she not upset? Why did she smile?" I smiled again as we stepped into the cool Atlanta night. Let them wonder. By morning, they would know exactly why. 5 years earlier, I had met Brandon at a real estate investment conference in Miami. I was 24, fresh out of graduate school with a master's degree in finance and a fire to prove myself in an industry where very few people looked like me. Brandon was 27, charismatic and ambitious, presenting a bold vision for urban redevelopment in Atlanta that caught my attention. "Most developers see buildings," he said during his presentation, his voice smooth and assured. "I see communities. I see possibility. I see the future." Afterward, I approached him with a folder of financial models I had been sketching out during his talk. "Your vision is strong," I told him, "but your numbers are a disaster. You underestimated costs by at least 30% and overestimated returns by 20%. Most men would have been offended." Brandon laughed, a rich, easy sound. "You are absolutely right. I am terrible with detailed numbers. Are you looking for a job?" That conversation turned into coffee. Coffee turned into late nights over spreadsheets. Late nights became a business partnership. Partnership became love. 6 months later, we launched Sterling Heights Real Estate with my savings and his relationships. I handled financial analysis, risk assessment, and investor relations. Brandon handled acquisitions, development, and public charm. Our first project was a modest apartment renovation in a struggling neighborhood. I ran the numbers 20 times, refusing to let us fail. Brandon charmed the contractors and city officials, turning favors into permits. When we sold those units at a 40% profit, we realized we had something powerful. We married a year later at my family's church. I wore a simple off-white dress that my grandmother altered herself. Brandon wore a navy suit and cried through his vows. We promised to be partners in business and life, to trust each other, to build something meaningful together. For the next 3 years, we kept that promise. Sterling Heights grew from 1 property to 15. We employed 30 people. We were featured in national magazines. My parents were proud. Brandon's parents treated me like a daughter. People called us a model couple. We hosted holiday parties in our new home and toasted to the future. It felt like the beginning of a long, bright story. Then Lena appeared. We needed someone to handle luxury property management, someone who understood high-end tenants and demanding clients. Lena came highly recommended from a New York firm. She had a degree from a prestigious university, experience with expensive properties, and references that sparkled on paper. During her interview, she sat across from Brandon and me, poised and confident in a dark green blazer. "You have built something remarkable," Lena said, looking between us. "Your numbers are clean, your brand is strong, and you have room to scale. I would love to help you expand your property management division." I liked her. That is what still stings when I think back. I liked the way she listened. I liked her ideas. I trusted her enough to tell her personal things I never should have shared. Lena started as our director of property management. Within 6 months, Brandon promoted her to vice president of operations. I should have asked more questions about the rapid promotion, but business was booming and I was distracted. We were trying to have a baby. For a year, my life became a cycle of appointments and blood tests. Fertility medications made me emotional and exhausted. I tracked my temperature and symptoms until my phone calendar looked like a medical chart. Lena brought me herbal tea when I felt sick. She volunteered to cover meetings when I needed to leave early. She listened when I vented about the pressure. "You are stronger than you realize," Lena told me one afternoon, resting a hand on my shoulder. "When you finally have your baby, all of this will be worth it." What I did not know was that while she pretended to comfort me, she was texting my husband from the same office. While she agreed to take work off my plate, she was taking something else entirely. The affair began about a year after Lena joined Sterling Heights, though I did not uncover it until later. In hindsight, the signs were obvious. Brandon's late nights at the office multiplied. His phone was always face down, always on silent. He suddenly decided to start going to the gym at odd hours. He bought new clothes and expensive cologne. I told myself it was stress. I told myself not to nag. When I finally became pregnant, naturally, unexpectedly, I thought that would fix everything. The doctor called on a Tuesday morning, and I cried when she said the words. Twins. 2 heartbeats. I rushed to Brandon's office with the ultrasound images in my trembling hands. He looked startled when I walked in, ending a phone call abruptly. "Is something wrong?" he asked, eyes wide. "Yes," I said, then laughed through tears. "There are 2 of them." His face transformed. He grabbed me, spun me in a clumsy half circle, and kissed my face. He called his parents on speakerphone and shouted the news. For a brief moment, we felt like the couple we had once been. But the affair did not end when I became pregnant. It intensified. Brandon was attentive at home, but emotionally distant in ways that mattered. He attended appointments, but checked his phone constantly. He helped paint the nursery, but stared past me when he thought I was not looking. Lena slid deeper into our lives. She offered to take on more responsibility so I could rest. She stayed late with Brandon to keep projects on track. She hosted an office baby shower with a 3-tier cake covered in tiny pink and blue footprints. In every photo from that day, I am smiling at the camera while Lena is smiling at Brandon. In every photo, they stand slightly too close. In every photo, I am the only one who does not know the joke. The truth began to unravel 3 months before our anniversary dinner. I was 7 months pregnant and exhausted when I asked to use Brandon's laptop because mine was updating. That one small hesitation before he handed it over told me more than any speech ever could. I opened his email, something I had never done in 5 years of marriage. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I would look, see nothing, feel silly, and close it. Instead, I found hundreds of messages between Brandon and Lena. I scrolled through months of their lives. Messages that began professional, shifted to friendly, then slipped easily into late-night confessions and explicit fantasies. "I cannot stop thinking about last night," he had written. "When can we be together again?" She responded, "She has no idea. She is too focused on getting pregnant to notice anything." That last sentence cracked something inside me. Not my heart, that would break later, but my faith in the man I thought I had married. I could have stormed into the living room and confronted him. I could have thrown the laptop, screamed, demanded answers. Instead, I kept reading. As I dug deeper, the betrayal grew fangs. They were not just sleeping together. They were stealing from me. Brandon and Lena had been quietly moving Sterling Heights properties into Lena's name. They used company funds to finance personal investments. They directed lucrative deals away from the firm and into shell entities Lena controlled. In one email, Lena wrote, "Once the babies come, she will be overwhelmed. We can convince her to step back, sign over her shares. If we frame it right, she will think it is her idea." That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I stopped being a trusting wife and became something else entirely. I closed the laptop, placed it back where Brandon had left it, lay down next to him that night, and stared at the ceiling while he slept peacefully beside me. In the darkness, I made a decision. I would not confront. I would not cry. I would dismantle them. The next morning, I woke up early and made breakfast as usual. Brandon strolled into the kitchen, kissed my cheek, and asked if I had slept well. Like a baby, I lied, placing scrambled eggs on his plate. After he left for work, I called Tanisha. "How pregnant are you right now?" Tanisha asked after I told her everything. Her voice, usually warm, had turned cold and precise. 7 months, I replied. Good. That gives us time. Do not confront him. Do not give them any hint that you know. Can you act normal for a few months? I looked down at my swollen belly and rested both hands over the twins. I can do whatever it takes. Then we will build a case that will bury them both, Tanisha said. You will not walk away from this empty-handed, Alexis. I promise. Tanisha referred me to a divorce attorney named Jerome Patterson, who specialized in high-asset cases involving family-owned businesses. We met in his downtown office, 40 floors above Atlanta, the skyline glittering outside his windows. Jerome was short, with sharp eyes that scanned documents like he could see through paper. Tell me everything, Jerome said, opening a legal pad. I told him about Sterling Heights, about how every successful deal had my spreadsheets behind it. I told him about the affair, the embezzlement, the property transfers. I showed him the emails I had copied onto an encrypted drive, the suspicious deeds, the bank statements that did not add up. After an hour of reviewing, Jerome looked up. This is worse than marital infidelity, he said. This is fraud. This is tax evasion. This is bank fraud and possibly wire fraud. If we pursue this properly, they could face criminal charges, not just civil penalties. Good, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. I do not just want out of the marriage. I want justice. Next, Jerome introduced me to a private investigator named Ruth Ellis, a former detective turned corporate investigator. We met in a quiet coffee shop outside the city. Ruth was in her 50s, lean and alert, with eyes that missed nothing. I slid an envelope across the table. Photos of Brandon and Lena, their schedules, addresses of properties I suspected. I need proof of the affair, I told Ruth. Photos, video, documentation of every hotel, every off-book meeting. I also need a clear picture of their business dealings. Where they go, who they meet, which contractors they are using. Ruth nodded slowly. How long has this been going on? At least 18 months, I replied. Maybe longer. And what do you want exactly? She asked. I want the truth on paper, in pictures, and in recordings, I answered. Enough that they cannot lie their way out of it. I want the complete story so that when I move, there is no way for them to paint me as the crazy, hormonal wife. Ruth named her price. I did not haggle. Some battles are too important to fight cheaply. Finally, Jerome brought in a forensic accountant named Harold Bennett. Harold's office was in Buckhead, filled with filing cabinets and computer screens alive with spreadsheets. I have reviewed the documents you sent, Harold said, tapping a thick folder. These property transfers to Lena's name are suspicious. The timing, the amounts, the lack of legitimate explanation. They strongly suggest a pattern of asset diversion. Can you prove it? I asked. Give me complete access to your business records, and I can prove anything, Harold replied. I handed over everything, bank statements, tax returns, partnership agreements, internal ledgers. 5 years of my life, neatly organized and ready to become evidence. For the next 3 months, I perfected the art of pretending. I smiled at Brandon across dinner while secretly photographing documents with my phone. I thanked Lena for taking care of me while copying her emails to a secure drive. I attended baby showers and prenatal classes while slipping away to meet with Ruth and Harold. My belly grew heavier. My resolve grew sharper. Ruth's updates were brutal. She showed me photos of Brandon and Lena entering hotels together, sometimes hand in hand. She played me audio recordings of them discussing, moving assets before Alexis notices, and laughing about how distracted I was by the pregnancy. In one recording, Lena said, "New mothers are exhausted. She will practically beg us to take work off her plate. That is when we move." Harold's findings were equally damning. Over an 18-month period, he identified more than $2,300,000 diverted from Sterling Heights into properties and accounts controlled by Lena. The transactions were disguised as contractor payments and fake consulting fees. None of it had been reported as income. This is clear-cut embezzlement, Harold explained during one meeting, spreading spreadsheets across the table. And because they hid it from the Internal Revenue Service, this is also federal tax fraud. The amounts are high enough to draw serious attention from federal prosecutors. Jerome built a legal strategy around their greed. He drafted divorce papers citing infidelity and financial misconduct. He prepared civil suits to recover stolen assets. He assembled a packet of evidence for the Internal Revenue Service and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. All we needed was a single dramatic moment to justify my sudden, decisive actions to the outside world. That moment arrived in the form of Lena's kiss at our anniversary dinner. While Brandon's family shattered in that private dining room and my mother-in-law clutched her chest, I stepped into a bathroom and made 3 phone calls that detonated his life. It was almost poetic. The morning after the dinner, I woke up in the guest room at Tanisha's townhome. She had refused to let me go back to my house that night. At 7 in the morning, she knocked on the door holding a cup of herbal tea and her tablet. "You are going to want to see this," she said, settling beside me. The headline on a major business site read, "Sterling Heights Real Estate Under Federal Investigation for Fraud." Below it was a photo of our office building, suddenly sinister in the harsh morning light. "Jerome moved fast," Tanisha said. "The Internal Revenue Service went public an hour ago. And look," she scrolled to social media. Sterling Heights was trending. Someone who had been at the restaurant had posted about the kiss. My phone buzzed nonstop. Brandon called. His parents called. Lena called over and over. My mother, my father, colleagues, investors, employees, even distant cousins I had not heard from in years. Everyone wanted to know what was happening. I ignored almost all of them except my mother. "Baby, are you all right?" she asked as soon as I picked up. "I am at Tanisha's," I said. "The twins are fine. Everything is going according to plan." There was a pause. "According to plan?" she repeated slowly. I took a deep breath and told her everything. The affair, the stolen money, the investigation, the lawsuits that had been quietly prepared. When I finished, my mother's voice turned cold. "That man cheated on you while you were carrying his children and stole from the business you built? Do whatever you need to do. Your father and I are behind you completely." That blessing settled something inside me. The next call I answered was from Brandon. "Alexis, where are you?" His voice sounded ragged, panicked. "We need to talk." "There is nothing to talk about," I replied. "The Internal Revenue Service is at the office." He exhaled hard. "They are freezing accounts, seizing documents, saying we committed fraud. I do not know what is happening. You have to help me." I almost laughed. "I know exactly what is happening," I said. "You and Lena stole from our company. You hid income. You committed tax fraud. You are simply facing the consequences." "No," Brandon protested. "There must be some misunderstanding. Alexis, whatever you think you saw. I have emails," I cut in. "I have bank statements. I have recordings. I have been building this case for 3 months while you were planning to push me out after the twins were born." There was a long silence on the line. When Brandon spoke again, his voice was hoarse. "You knew. I knew everything. I made terrible mistakes," he said quietly. "But we can fix this. We can fix us." "We can. We cannot," I replied. "You are being served with divorce papers today. I am taking my share of the company, and I will let the courts and the government decide what happens to the rest. You and Lena can explain your mistakes to the judge." "You cannot do this to me," he said. The pleading in his voice might once have broken my resolve. Now it only tired me. "I am not doing anything to you," I answered. "You did this to yourself." Then I hung up. My hands trembled, but I felt powerful. For 3 months I had moved like a ghost in my own life. Now I was finally visible. By noon, Sterling Heights was bleeding. Our largest investor, a venture capital firm that had committed $50 million to our expansion, sent an official notice. They were pulling out immediately. That triggered clauses in 2 other major agreements. Within hours, they pulled out as well. The company that had been valued at over $100 million yesterday now held a reputation soaked in scandal. That afternoon, the chief financial officer, Nathan Hughes, called me. "Alexis, I need to tell you something," he said, voice shaking. "Brandon asked me to help hide some transactions 6 months ago. He said it was a sophisticated tax strategy. I felt uneasy, but he was my boss. I processed transfers to Lena's accounts. When the Internal Revenue Service showed up, I realized what I had done. "Nathan, you need to get an attorney," I told him. "Immediately. Tell the truth. Cooperate fully. If Brandon misled you, that matters. But you need your own representation." After we hung up, I called Jerome and Harold. "This is going to help," Jerome said. "The more people show how Brandon used his authority to manipulate them, the stronger the criminal case becomes." That evening, I asked Tanisha to drive me to my house. I needed clothes. I needed documents. I needed to see the nursery one last time before I made a decision. The house was quiet when we pulled into the driveway. Brandon's car was gone. The nursery door was closed. I opened it slowly. 2 cribs stood side by side, separated by a white changing table. The walls were painted soft yellow with clouds and stars. A rocking chair with a burgundy cushion sat in the corner. Tiny clothes hung in the closet, all washed and folded. I sat in the rocking chair and finally cried. I did not cry for Brandon or for Sterling Heights. I cried for the dream that had died. The picture I had built in my head of late-night feedings side by side, of school plays, of family vacations, of growing old together. That life was gone now. In its place stood something harder and sharper, but also more honest. After a while, Tanisha stepped into the doorway. She did not rush me. She just waited. I wiped my face. "Let us pack everything," I said quietly. "The cribs, the clothes, all of it. I am not raising my children in this house." We spent 2 hours loading Tanisha's sport utility vehicle with boxes and furniture. With every item I carried out the front door, I felt lighter. As we were closing the hatch on the last box, headlights swept across the driveway. Brandon's car pulled in. He stepped out slowly, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. His suit was rumpled, his eyes red, his shoulders slumped. "Alexis," he said, his voice rough. "Please, can we talk?" "There is nothing left to talk about," I replied. "You need to leave us alone." "You cannot take everything," he said desperately, glancing at the cribs in the back of the vehicle. "Think about our children. They need their father." I turned fully to face him, one hand braced against my belly. "My children will have their father in whatever way the court decides is safe," I said. "But you lost the right to appeal to me about them when you decided to betray me while I carried them." "It was a mistake," Brandon said. "All of it. Lena, the money, everything. I was selfish and arrogant. I am so sorry." "Are you sorry you did it?" I asked. "Or sorry you got caught?" He could not answer. That silence told me everything I needed to know. "You had 18 months to stop," I continued. 18 months to tell me the truth. 18 months to choose integrity. You chose yourself instead. Now you live with that." Tanisha touched my elbow. "We need to go, Alexis. You have been on your feet too long." She was right. My back ached, and the twins were kicking restlessly. Without another word, I got into the car. "Alexis," Brandon called as we began to back out. I rolled down the window an inch. "I love you," he said. "I know you do not believe that, but I do." I looked at him one last time. "If that is what you think love looks like," I said, "then I am grateful we are getting divorced. I deserve better than that." Then I left him standing in the driveway of the home we had once celebrated as our biggest win. 3 weeks later, Sterling Heights officially collapsed, filing for bankruptcy protection under the weight of lawsuits and federal investigations. I watched the news from Tanisha's couch with my swollen feet propped up and a cup of tea cooling beside me. It felt strange to see the company's name scroll across the screen like some distant tragedy instead of my own life. During that same period, my future arrived quietly in the form of an email from Samuel Robertson, a respected developer I had admired for years. He had mentored me early in my career, long before I built Sterling Heights with Brandon. "I heard what happened," his email read. "The industry knows who built that company. If you ever want to talk about your next chapter, call me." We met at a cafe in Midtown Atlanta. I waddled in wearing a comfortable green maternity dress. Samuel stood when he saw me, helping me ease into the chair. "You look like those babies could come any day now," he said kindly. "That is exactly how I feel," I replied with a tired laugh. "I have been thinking about you," Samuel said. "You are one of the best financial strategists I have ever worked with. What Brandon and Lena did to you is disgraceful. But you are about to be a single mother of twins, starting over after a very public betrayal. I want to make sure you know you have options." He leaned forward. "I am launching a new division focused on sustainable urban development. I need someone brilliant to run the financial side. I want that person to be you. 40% equity in the division, full control over financial decisions, flexible schedule, and support for childcare when you need to travel. I will bring relationships and capital. You bring the genius." I stared at him, stunned. "You want to partner with me after all this?" "Especially after all this," Samuel said. "You chose integrity when it would have been easier to hide the fraud and keep cash flowing. That is the kind of person I want in charge of my money." I thought about it for exactly 10 seconds. "Yes," I said. "I am in. But I need a few months after the twins are born, and I want everything in writing, thoroughly reviewed by my own attorney." Samuel laughed. "That is the Alexis I know. We will do it right." That afternoon, the contractions started. By evening, Tanisha was driving me to the hospital, gripping my hand each time a wave of pain rolled through my body. My parents met us there, my mother fussing and praying, my father pacing the hallway. Labor lasted 18 hours. It was pain and fear and determination wrapped together, but I never once wished Brandon was there. Tanisha stayed at my side, wiping my face, counting my breaths. My mother whispered encouragement into my ear when I wanted to give up. At 3 a.m, my daughter was born, 6 pounds 3 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and a cry that filled the room. I held her against my chest and sobbed with relief. "Zuri," I whispered. "Your name is Zuri. It means beautiful, and that is what you are." 20 minutes later, my son arrived. 5 pounds 11 ounces, smaller but just as fierce, his tiny fists clenched as if he had arrived ready to fight. "Amari," I said when they placed him on my other side. "Your name means strength. You are beautiful and strong." When a nurse later mentioned that Brandon was in the waiting area asking to see us, I did not hesitate. "He can see them through the nursery window," I said. "He is not coming into this room." On the security monitor, I watched him stand at the glass, shoulders shaking as he stared at the 2 tiny lives he had almost gambled away. Days later, as I settled into life at Tanisha's place with 2 newborns and an avalanche of diaper changes, Jerome called. "The indictments came through," he said. "Federal charges against Brandon and Lena, wire fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion. If they are convicted, they are looking at 5 to 7 years in prison, possibly more." I looked down at Zuri asleep on my chest and Amari curled in a bassinet nearby. Instead of satisfaction, I felt something quieter, relief. My children would grow up in a house built on truth, not on money stolen behind closed doors. That mattered more than any sentence a judge could hand down. The trial began when the twins were 4 months old. By then, my parents had temporarily moved to Atlanta to help with the babies, giving me space to focus on the court proceedings. On the first day, I wore a maroon suit that fit my post-pregnancy body and reminded me of my wedding dress. I walked into the courtroom with my head high. Brandon sat at the defense table in a gray suit, noticeably thinner, his eyes hollow. Lena sat at a separate table with her own attorney, her once impressive confidence replaced by a rigid blankness. They did not look at each other. The partnership that had destroyed my marriage clearly could not survive the spotlight. The prosecution laid out a devastating case. They presented Harold's spreadsheets, the bank records, the emails where Brandon and Lena discussed how to move money before I noticed anything. They called Nathan Hughes, who admitted he had processed suspicious transactions at Brandon's request and explained how guilty he felt. They called investors who testified about being misled. Eventually, they called me. I walked to the witness stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and promised to tell the truth. The prosecutor, Patricia Davis, approached with a calm smile. "Mrs. King, can you describe your role at Sterling Heights Real Estate?" "I was the co-founder and chief financial officer," I said. "I handled all financial analysis, risk assessment, investor relations, and strategic planning." "And what was Mr. King's role?" Patricia asked. "He was the chief executive officer," I replied. "He focused on acquisitions, development, and public relations." "Who had more financial expertise?" Patricia asked. "I did," I answered. "I hold a master's degree in finance. Brandon has a general business degree, but no specialized financial training." Patricia nodded. "So when it came to understanding complex financial transactions, you would say you had the greater expertise." "Without question," I replied. She walked me through everything. The discovery of the emails, the decision not to confront Brandon immediately, the steps I took to document the fraud. I spoke calmly, never raising my voice. When she asked why I had gone to the authorities, I said, "Because protecting a fraudulent company and a dishonest marriage would have meant betraying myself. I was not willing to do that." Brandon's attorney tried to paint me as a vengeful wife consumed by spite. "Is it true that you were angry about the affair?" he asked. "Of course I was angry," I answered. "Any reasonable person would be. But I did not create false evidence. I reported crimes that actually occurred." He asked if I had destroyed Sterling Heights out of revenge. "No," I said. "Brandon and Lena destroyed Sterling Heights when they stole from it. I simply refused to hide it." After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury found both Brandon and Lena guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge looked directly at Brandon. "You violated the trust of your wife, your investors, your employees, and the law," she said. "You are sentenced to 7 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release, and you will be required to pay full restitution." She gave Lena the same sentence. I did not cheer or cry. I simply closed my eyes and exhaled a breath I felt I had been holding for more than a year. Justice was not neat. It did not erase what I had lost. But it was real. In the months that followed, my new life took shape. Samuel and I finalized our partnership, forming Equity Development, a sustainable housing division under his company that I would eventually spin into its own firm. We focused on affordable housing in underserved American communities, using ethical labor and transparent finances. Every deal was audited. Every dollar was tracked. 2 years after the anniversary dinner, I stood on a stage at a major business conference in Miami, wearing a royal blue dress and speaking to a packed room about integrity in business. The moderator introduced me as Alexis King, founder and chief executive officer of Equity Development, known for exposing fraud at her former company and rebuilding her career from the ground up. I told my story, not as a tale of revenge, but as a lesson in self-respect. I spoke about documentation, about trusting intuition, about refusing to shrink in the face of betrayal. Afterward, a young woman named Brittany approached me, eyes bright with tears. "My business partner and boyfriend is stealing from our company," she said softly. "I have proof, but I am terrified of what will happen if I act." "I cannot make the decision for you," I told her. "But I can tell you this. The regret of doing nothing lasts longer than the fear of doing the right thing. Document everything. Protect yourself. Remember that your future is worth more than someone else's comfort." She squeezed my hand and nodded. Back in Atlanta, Zuri and Amari were 2 years old, energetic and curious. My parents helped with child care when I traveled. Tanisha, their godmother, spoiled them constantly. They knew that their father was somewhere far away, serving time because he had made bad choices. They also knew they were loved, safe, and surrounded by people who told them the truth. Brandon served 4 years before becoming eligible for early release due to good behavior and completion of rehabilitation programs. Jerome called me one afternoon. "His attorney is requesting early parole," he said. "He has done everything required. The board may grant it. Do you want to oppose it?" I thought about it long and hard. "No," I said finally. "If he has genuinely changed, he deserves a chance to rebuild his life and be some kind of father to our children. I am not interested in punishing him forever. I just want boundaries." 6 months later, Brandon walked out of prison. He moved into a halfway house, began working at a nonprofit organization teaching financial literacy to low-income families, and started supervised visitation with the twins at a monitored facility. The first time he saw them outside of prison walls, Zuri stared at him curiously while Amari clung to my leg. They called him Brandon, not Daddy. It hurt him, but that was the natural outcome of his choices. "How are you?" I asked during one visit, watching him bounce Amari gently. "Different," he said honestly. "Prison forced me to look at who I was. I read your book." By then, I had written and published a memoir titled The Strategic Queen: How I Turned Betrayal into Justice and Built an Empire on Integrity. "What did you think?" I asked. "It was painful," he admitted, "seeing everything from your perspective. But it was fair. You told the truth. I cannot say I did not deserve what happened." He paused. "I do not expect another chance with you. I just hope that one day our kids can be proud of the man I am trying to become. That is between you and them," I said gently. "I am done measuring your progress. My focus is on raising them well and running my company." For the first time in years, I felt no anger when I looked at him, only a distant, detached sort of compassion. He was a man living inside the consequences he had created. Equity Development grew quickly. We expanded to multiple states, building over 2,000 affordable housing units. We partnered with cities and nonprofits, created job training programs, and turned abandoned lots into thriving communities. Industry journals praised our transparency. Universities invited me to speak about ethical entrepreneurship. At home, I was simply mama. I cooked dinner, braided Zuri's hair, played superhero games with Amari, and read stories every night. When Zuri was 4, she asked me, "Why does Brandon not live with us like other daddies?" I sat on the edge of her bed and brushed her curls back from her face. "Because sometimes adults make choices that change their families," I said. "Brandon made some very bad choices before you were born. He had to go away for a while to face the consequences. But he loves you, and he is working to be better now." "Did you make bad choices too?" she asked. "No," I said. "I made hard choices. I chose to stand up for what was right, even when it was painful. That is different from making bad choices. Zuri thought about that, then nodded solemnly. That sounds strong. That is what strength is, I said. 5 years after the anniversary dinner, I stood at the grand opening of Equity Development's largest project yet, a 200-unit affordable housing community with a community center, job training facility, and public park in an American city that had once ignored its poorest residents. The governor cut the ribbon. Families cheered. Children ran across new grass. Samuel stood beside me, a proud smile on his face. You did it, he said. You took ashes and built something extraordinary. We did it, I corrected, but I knew what he meant. I looked out over the townhouses and playgrounds and felt a deep, quiet satisfaction. This was the empire I had always wanted, not the illusion I had built with Brandon, but something real, rooted in integrity. That night, I sat in my own backyard with a glass of wine, watching Zuri and Amari chase each other across the grass as the sky turned pink and gold. My phone buzzed with congratulatory messages, but I set it aside. The only things that mattered were in front of me. Someone once asked if I would change anything if I could go back to that first day I saw Brandon at the conference in Miami. Would I avoid him? Would I spare myself years of pain? Surprisingly, my answer was no. Not because he deserved me, but because I deserved the woman I became after surviving him. The betrayal taught me my worth. The fight for justice taught me my strength. The rebuilding taught me that I could create a life far better than the one I lost. Brandon served his time and now works quietly, paying restitution and slowly earning a measured role in our children's lives. Lena served her full sentence and disappeared into another state, living under a different name, far from the world she schemed to dominate. Sterling Heights exists now only in case studies and cautionary lectures about ethics in business. Equity Development stands as its opposite, a testament to what can be built when integrity is non-negotiable. My children are growing up in a home where they see that actions have consequences and that self-respect is worth defending. I will always be the woman who walked out of an anniversary dinner with a secret smile while the room collapsed behind her. I will always be the woman who picked up a phone in a restaurant bathroom and changed the course of several lives. People call me the strategic queen. I have learned to accept the title, not because revenge defines me, but because strategy saved me. More than anything, I am Alexis King. A mother, a builder, a woman who refused to let betrayal write the ending of her story. I wrote my own ending line by line, contract by contract, brick by brick. And as I watched my children laugh in the fading light, I knew with absolute certainty, I did not just survive. I won. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.